Yali Madad, everyone. I'm Shabnam Milani from Itreb, Uganda. Devices and over 2,000 interactive sessions in the past 25 years in multiple countries in North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. He travels extensively every year and provides consultancy, training, and advocacy in various community-based institutional initiatives. Alvaz has worked for ITREP Tanzania in the professional capacity of RE coordinator and executive officer for approximately 8 years. More so, he held the position of executive officer of Aga Khan National Council, Uganda for 10 years. He has joined ITRE for Uganda early this year as an executive officer on 2-year assignment. Today's presentation is a part of his final thesis for ISMC, which was marked with distinction and considered one of the 3 best theses in the history of ISMC in archaeology and anthropology. Without taking much time, I request Alvaz to begin his presentation. Over to you, Alvaz.
Thank you very much, Shabnam, Yali Madad, all of you. It's an honor for me to present this topic on behalf of ITREP Uganda. I'm not sure about you because you're listening to me second time in a row. And hopefully the ITREP Kenya or Tanzania will take over from next month. So our first session was about knowledge society. And if you remember, our last session for IMTP was on about AKTC projects and its relevance and Jamaat institution. So I thought that it would be a good continuation from AKTC projects to come to talk about cultural heritage sites and how does it impact people, local community that live around those sites. Of course, we cannot gather all the heritage sites and talk about that. So that's why I thought of considering a couple of sites which are on the Swahili coast of East Africa. So thank you, Shabnam, for a wonderful introduction and also for the participants today who have joined. It's going to be an hour or 5 minutes, 10 minutes presentation. If there are any questions, then we can take those questions followed by evaluation, a very small evaluation, and then we'll close today's session. So there are so many words that come to our mind: cultural, then heritage, then Swahili coast, then quality of life. What do we mean by all this? So let me take you to the second slide, and we start this. So when you see this title, there are so many things that come to our mind. First of all, what do you mean by anything that is cultural? What do we mean by cultural site? Then there is also a word called heritage. Then what do we call a heritage sites? How do we define that? What is conservation? We always use preservation, restoration, rehabilitation, and so many other words. So what is conservation? Then we'll talk about Swahili coast, and which is very relevant to all Africa, ITREP. We live in this continent. It's pertinent to talk about our heritage sites and the impact on quality of life. So again, the question is, what do we mean by quality of life? It's such a vast and general term. So I'm going to talk about certain components of quality of life today, or variables. So let us go one by one before we embark on the sites and the people living around those sites. Now you see here, if you see, there are certain images that you are looking. The first one, you can see Fort Jesus, Mombasa, iconic heritage site. Then next to it is a site that is found in Kampala. This is Tombs of Buganda Kings at Kasubi. There are 4 tombs, and it's considered its architecture inside, and it represents, an important cultural icon for Buganda Kingdom. So the next slide, if you see images, stone town of Zanzibar. So we moved from Kenya, I brought to you Uganda, and then we moved to Tanzania. Then if you come down, I want to move to Madagascar. That is the Royal Hill of Ambohi Manga. It's it's called a pilgrimage site. People go there, and it is quite historical and important site for people of Madagascar. Next to it is island of Mozambique. Now, very next to Mozambique, there is a small island which is very historic. From 16th century, it has a particular type of architectural combination which has continued, and that's why it is called a heritage site. And the 6th image is found in DRC, and this is Okapi Wildlife Reserve. So there are very few. It is endangered species. It is also called Congo giraffe. It is also called forest giraffe. So you will not find these animals in other reserve or other game parks. So all these 6 images, why am I showing to you? I'm showing to you because these are considered as World Heritage Sites according to UNESCO. So we are talking about what do we mean by heritage sites. So UNESCO has a particular criterion, and according to the criteria now, there are 10 criterion, and each and every criteria some represent natural heritage sites, others are related to cultural heritage site. So if any site, natural site or cultural site, if any of them meeting the criteria mentioned in UNESCO, then they are liable to be inscribed under World Heritage Sites by UNESCO. On top of it, World Monument Fund has a watch list. So these are the sites, the government, the custodian, and the local community, they approach these international agencies, whether it's AKTC or UNESCO or World Monument Fund, and then they request them to consider this site for restoration, conservation, or rehabilitation, etc. So according to World Heritage List, now you will hear this World Heritage List quite often. What do we mean by? So World Heritage List by UNESCO is actually, it's about over 1,000 heritage sites that represent outstanding universal value. That is what we mean by OUV, which is also defined by UNESCO. So as I told you, there are 10 criteria. And one of the criteria, by the way, I've written here, and you can read that one of the criterion is to bear, a site should bear a unique or at least exceptional testimony to a cultural tradition or to a civilization which is living or which has disappeared. So there are almost 10 criteria. We don't have time to discuss World Heritage Sites. We don't want to dwell too much on it. But this is what we call World Heritage Sites inscribed under UNESCO. Now, when we talk about Victoria Falls, Zambia, that is also a natural heritage sites. So there are natural heritage sites, there are cultural heritage sites like Taj Mahal. So why it is culture? Because it represents people, it was built for a purpose, it is iconic building representing a dynasty, etc. So when we talk about culture, we know that the word comes from cultus, which means to care. So we take care. That is what culture means. But if you go and define, as mentioned by Cambridge, that it's a way of life, specifically the general customs and beliefs of a particular group of people at a particular time. But this definition is also not very much complete because it's very general. So if we go and explain it further, then there's an understanding that culture represents a way of life and a pattern of behavior of a particular time and group, communicated through symbols that can be music, that can be cloth, that can be language, that can be monuments, that can be any artifacts, carrying meanings, which includes objects of art such as monuments. So you can see that Taj Mahal is a cultural heritage site. Victoria Falls is a natural heritage site that needs attention because it's iconic. When it comes to heritage, heritage means to inherit. So of course, something from past. So heritage as a legacy from the past, what we live today and what we pass on to future generations. So cultural and natural heritage are both irreplaceable sources of life and inspiration. Now look at this Victoria Falls and look at Taj Mahal. All right, irreplaceable, iconic building or site that needs attention if there is any kind of danger in terms of decay, erosion, or history because of the time, uh, and if there are any natural hazards involved. So that's why UNESCO, World Monument Fund, and AKTC and other institutions, global institutions, come to restore these sites. So we talked about cultural heritage sites. We very briefly talked about culture, heritage, natural heritage sites. We also discussed World Heritage Sites, okay, by UNESCO. Very importantly, there are so many technical terms used in material culture preservation, uh, so that heritage preservation and protection types. Now you see there are already, and we sometimes interchangeably use that. It's again no time, I can always share with you the handouts, but look at the rehabilitation, preservation, and conservation. So when you are restoring one site, and if you add additional feature to its function, that is rehabilitation, like rehabilitation of Forodani Park in Zanzibar. So added functions were attached to the site in order, because that was the need of the function. Okay, preservation, conservation are restoration methods, but when we talk about conservation, it is actually we are working on the object. We may add something for to avoid decay, or we subtract something in order for structural integrity. Let us look conservation. When we talk about conservation, conservation is the hands-on act of working directly with the object to preserve its current condition. So there is a basket, it's torn, you are working, you are repairing, you are probably adding another thread, that is conservation or repairing. Add supporting material into the existing object to ensure continuity of its durability and structural integrity. There are many heritage sites along Swahili coast of East Africa, and during the conservation process, they've added some material. So in order to sustain the integrity of the structure. Conservators use restoration treatments to enhance the object to its original state or appearance by removing accumulated layers of dirt or adding necessary components that have gone missing. Now, many sites which are at the shore, because of the erosion and decay, the walls, are dying. So the particular material is used without hampering the, what do you call, the integrity or the historical make of that site. So that is what we talk about conservation. Now, if you see, in the beginning, I told you that watch out for some words: cultural, heritage sites, conservation. Let me take you to the Swahili coast, and then we talk about quality of life. All right. So when we talk about Swahili coast, you see this Eastern Africa map, and if the portion that is shaded in red, that was a trade route. If you are talking about 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th century, this was the great trade route that was used by some of the sites and the dynasty that was present. I'll talk about that later. But if you see, it starts little below than Mogadishu, and it's come down, and even northern parts of Mozambique. All is Swahili coast. Swahili Sahel people from the shore. When we talk about um, Swahili coast of East Africa, then it narrows. South Swahili coast of East Africa. Like if you are talking about Tanzania, Kenya, then it gets little shorter. So the Swahili coast constitute the coastal areas of current nations in East Africa, which extends from Mogadishu, all right, and it comes down to the Bay of Sofala in Mozambique. Okay, Swahili coast comprises, you'll be surprised that 450 registered archaeological sites. How rich we are when it comes to natural and cultural heritage sites. 450 registered archaeological sites which are spread over 3,000 kilometers of the coastline. And we are going to talk about two such heritage sites today and its implication. If you see, this is the coast of Tanzania. You start from here, Tanga, where I was born, and then we come down. You'll see Bagamoyo, then Zanzibar. You come further down, and Mafia Island and Kilwa Kisiwani, one of the greatest, historical place in Swahili coast we'll talk about. So this is Swahili coast of Tanzania. So when we talk about archaeology and anthropology, like study of man, archaeology, study of material culture, and if you see, there is a very deep connection between archaeology and anthropology. Man, human beings cannot be isolated with their environment. They are part and parcel of it. So the buildings, monuments speak to people, and people speak to monuments. You know, their life is surrounded by those heritage sites. They own it. They are the long-term custodian of those sites. So their involvement, their feeling, their involvement, and their opinion matters when it comes to conservation of any heritage sites. So we talk about the relationship between archaeology, that is material culture, and the anthropology, human being. We'll discuss more. Now, I'm sure people can quickly guess, what do you see here? Yeah? Can you see, can you name what do you see here? Is it, what do you call, somewhere in Europe or where? You want to write in chat? Ah, Dilshah says this is Serena Zanzibar. Somebody says Mombasa. Zanzibar ko Zaur. You have been there many times, I know. So, coming to this Zanzibar, look how beautiful it is, and look at the condition of Forodhani Park here. So it's an old photograph, but such a beautiful, and I'm sure everyone has gone to Zanzibar and enjoyed the stone town and the history over there. I will also take you to another place. Now let me see who says. Who writes here in the chat? Any guesses? Well, Zanzibar was easy. What do you think about the second side? Any idea? Is it Mombasa? Is it Mafia? Or is it Pemba Island? I don't know. Fort Jesus, though you had shown earlier, okay. You are very close, but not really. So this is Kilwa Kisiwani, southern coastal area of Tanzania. Kilwa Kisiwani. So I'm going to talk about two sites present in these great historical towns. Okay. When we talk about implications, social implications or quality of life, when we talk about implications on quality of life, it can be economic gain. So if there is any conservation projects going on, how is it going to, impact my life economically? Am I gaining any financial out of this? And the other part is social implications. What do you mean by social implication? I'm talking about Zanzibar Stone Town and Forodhani Park. AKTC worked on it. And Kilwa Kiswani, I'm going to introduce the great mosque that many of us don't know. That is in Kilwa Kiswani. When we talk about conservation, what are the social implications of this rehabilitation or conservation? When we talk about social implication, the word social is so general, so people ask, what do you mean by social implication? Well, there are so many variables. You won't believe, I will tell you how people feel after conservation of these sites, the impact on their social life, whether it's relationship, they are celebrating, having celebration there. They feel that they are free to move there. It provides them opportunity to recreation. They spend vacation. It brings dignity. It forms, fosters their identity. It provides opportunity for interaction. Family go, it explores language, health, play, hobbies, values, festivals. And imagine, I understand when we talk about great mosque, but even when you talk about Forodhani Park, there are certain variables related to religion, faith, okay, recognition, community, dress, marriage. All these are, social variables. And if conservation takes place in any heritage sites, apart from economic gain, there are social implications. So, well, that is our topic today. Yeah? So, through these two conservation projects or rehabilitation work, I will tell you how did it impact the life of local community living there in Tanzania. So far we concluded cultural and heritage sites. What is conservation? What do we mean by Swahili coast of East Africa? Let me take to you Stone Town of Zanzibar, and we will land on Forodhani Park, and then later we will talk about Kilwa Kisiwani, a small island in the southern coastal area, Lindi region of Tanzania, and we'll talk about Great Mosque of Kilwa. And then towards the end, economic and social implication. Such a beautiful park, yeah. Forodhani Park, Zanzibar. And I showed you the previous earlier status of this Forodhani Park. It has totally different outlook, not only in terms of the physical site, but it has also changed the outlook, the social and economic outlook of people who are related to this site. Now, this is the center and the hub of Stone Town of Zanzibar, yes, seafront, and you can see that it is open for all. It is free entry. You don't require any fees there, and the implications are enormous. My question is, when AKTC took this project with the government of Zanzibar, why is Imam or AKTC so much interested in gardens? Well, this is a very normal garden, all right? Why do we want to restore it? Any idea? What comes to your mind when we talk about garden? Anyone wants to? Yeah. Let me unfold few realities. So if you see Forodhani Park, garden we are talking of, this is Alberta. I will take you to Sundar Nursery, Alberta Garden, Cairo probably, and you will see Imam has particular interest, and through AKTC is doing a lot of things. understand what Imam is saying in his speech. Alberta, Arkhan Garden in Alberta. In his speech, Imam says the symbol of the garden as a spiritual symbol goes back to the Holy Quran, where garden is portrayed as a place of peace and paradise. Yeah, back to the Holy Quran itself, where the garden ideal is mentioned many times. Down through many centuries, Islamic culture has continued to see the garden as a very special place where the human needs further proof of the divine, where you meet nature, where you meet divine. He again explains, same Aga Khan Garden, Alberta, the garden of Islamic tradition is also a place where the flow of refreshing water reminds us of divine blessing. You know, the sound of water and the fountain reminds us of divine blessings, which is again flowing on everyone. It is a place for meditation. Now look at the function of garden, okay? It is a place for meditation and quiet renewal. But I would likewise emphasize that the garden through history has also been seen as a social space, that is a place for learning. Can you imagine? Garden is also a place for learning, for sharing, for romance, for diplomacy, for reflection on the destiny of the human race. And even as we share the garden experience with one another, we can feel a connection with those who walked through similar gardens in the past. And when I take you to the Kilwa, I will tell you how people feel their forefathers there. They used to do this, they used to pray here, etc. So there is a connection with the past. So meditation, diplomacy, romance, reflection, all right, quiet renewal, meditation, Imam is highlighting functions. When you go to Sundar Nursery, Imam in his speech 2018 mentions to restore, create, and revitalize beautiful green spaces has been a prime goal of the AKTC in recent years. Now he is counting with 10 notable successes in place. Now ranging from Cairo, Al-Azhar Garden Cairo, Al-Azhar Park to Zanzibar, Forodani, from Toronto Park to Kabul, from Dushanbe in Tajikistan to Bamako in Mali, and of course here in India. Now, all of these projects were designed to honor the past. Why do we restore cultural heritage site? Because that is a legacy we want to renew and we want to preserve our past because it talks to us while also serving the future. And it is with the future in mind that we now dedicate that Sundar Nursery as one of the world's great public parks, open to all, again functions for recreation, for contemplation, for education, and for inspiration. I lived few years in garden flats in Dar es Salaam, and I remember a family came from Canada, knocked the door, and I opened, Yali Mudad, how are you? You know, can I talk to you for a minute? Yes. How can I help you? Baro barabar hai. It's a asain hai ye ghar mein rona. We used to live in this house. I brought my son and my daughter, and I want them to see how we used to live here. I want to tell them that probably you were very, very young when we were here, and I want to show you how we lived there. Probably they are now living in 3 times larger place, yet they came to this house to show children, you know, see, we used to live here. How can we detach ourselves from history, from our past? Now, when it comes to this, these are the legacies, these are the heritage sites, global iconic places. And in the Sundar Nursery, again, Imam mentioned that Just think what a lively, 1 minute, I cannot read, yeah, place this will be in the days and years to come. Already we are told a vast array of birds and butterflies have made their new homes in these restored places, spaces. As soon as and soon they will be joined by school children coming here to experience a variety of new microhabitats, by scientists advancing their ecological research, by artists meeting audiences in the beautiful garden amphitheater, by historians and other visitors engaging with dozens of preserved historical monuments. And we think about this lively future. We also know one more thing. Our economic planning means that the Sundar nursery will also be self-sustaining entity. So I showed you, we talk about Cairo, we talk about Sundar nursery, we talk about Alberta, and Imam was mentioning about garden and why it is important. Yeah. Now, Forodhani, when it was inaugurated on 30th July 2009, when the rehabilitation work was complete, and with the Zanzibar lead, Imam was there, and he mentioned in his speech that we undertake these projects. Now, if I want to ask AKTC and our Imam that why do you invest in these projects? In part because they can reinforce a sense of identity within proud communities, providing gateways to cultural understanding for local citizens and for visitors alike. But there is more to the matter than that. These cultural initiatives, in each case, have also been accompanied by a social and economic rationale. Did you see the beauty of such projects? Instead of handing over, handout, how Imam helps the local community through our cultural heritage sites, that the people who are engaged with the site gain enormously in terms of social implication and economic gain. So that the entire project was to improve the well-being of the people who live in these areas. How does this happen? It happens when many components come together like pieces of a complex puzzle. Let's unfold the puzzle. Let's unfold the puzzle. How does it help local community? All right. Now, if you see Zanzibar, this is 150, 170, 150-year-old photograph of Zanzibar. So vibrant, okay, representing rich and diversified cultural heritage. By the way, the whole stone town of Zanzibar is the cultural heritage site under UNESCO. Not Forodhani Park, the whole stone town of Zanzibar was once a hub of international trade and a gateway to Africa. And Omani Sultanate make this Zanzibar as their capital. This historic and mysterious island of Zanzibar owes its charisma to many mesmerizing features, including spices, ivory, slave trade, conquerors, explorers, center of commerce and international trade, and seat of learning as well. So Zanzibar is an important part in the Muslim world. All right, we have 1.3 million population right now, 99% Muslims. Now, Imam invested in so many other projects in Zanzibar, but I'm going to talk about Forodhani Park. So in the year 2000, this stone town of Zanzibar became the part of World Heritage List. Stone town of Zanzibar, Forodhani is part of it, okay? The park was rehabilitated by the Aga Khan Trust 12 years ago in 2008, and it was opened on 30th July 2009. Now this park was called Jubilee Gardens, which were erected during the time of King George V. We are talking about 1935, yeah? And if you see here in this photograph, this ornamental bandstand where fountains and shelters were included the following year through a public subscription campaign to celebrate Silver Jubilee of the Sultan Khalifa. If you go to this Forodani Park, you will see in Arabic, this plaque. You will see Jubilee memorials in English. Surprisingly, you will also see in Gujarati. And here you will see, and you know very well, Zanzibar was one of first places for subcontinent Ismailis to move. And this is the plaque of 30th July 2009 when Imam opened this with Karumaya. So this was a very brief about Forodani. Now, when this project was completed, you have seen how it looked before and how it, created, new look, and also for the local communities. If you go to Zanzibar today, you will find a person speaking Spanish there, visiting tourists. People are speaking Urdu, Gujarati, Hindi, okay, where English and Swahili meet. So they all, it's a place. And when I spent almost 12 days, I met so many people who came for so many different activities. And I wondered that, imagine, think about a garden that can serve so many purposes, and apart from relaxation and socialization. Okay, so when the interviews were conducted, 30% said that it is a source of relaxation. So when they were asked, well, before the rehabilitation, it could also be, it must have been source of relaxation. They said, no, before rehabilitation work, there were no benches, the lighting system and the cleanliness, it was horrible, and not many people used to come there. But after conservation, it has changed the look of Forodani Park, which is the hub of Stone Town. So 30% found that they came for relaxation, 28% came for socialization, some came for entertainment. Surprisingly, and because of the limited sample, 17% talked about economic gain and 7%, other activities. Now, if you talk about relaxation, you see here near the band, you see people come and they rest here. Some are contemplating. People, as you will also find group talking together, socializing, having meetings. You will be surprised that those people who live and who work in Stone Town, during their lunch break, they come here and they take lunch, or they spend time half an hour here. There are students, college students, school students who come to do their homework. You will also find couple holding hand, sitting in one corner. You will also find people listening to the, performances near this bandstand. So there are performances that sometimes school, sometimes music, sometimes sports events. When you come on Eid, Forodani will show a different face where there is no place to move. And the night time of Forodani is totally different than day, with a lot of Swahili food and cuisine, and people enjoy. There are people, I can show you. You see, there is a playground here. This is part of Forodani Park. And, the people, Zanzibari people, would love to bring their children here. So it provides entertainment, they play, they become happy. There are many people, if you look closely here, some are resting, some are, contemplating. Here you can see tourists visiting Forodani Park, and there is a tour guide. Now this tour guide, all right, this place has become economic gain for him. Forget about this. There are 65 stalls. 65 stalls at night time. I must be having, my mouth is also watery. Look at this. And if you see some videos, seafood and all, 65 stalls, and each stall owner employs 4 to 5 members. 65 multiplied by 5. They say it is reported that 400 people are dependent on Forodani Park for their livelihood. And now this, you exclude 3 kiosks. There are 3 large kiosks you cannot see here that has 15, 20 other employees. So the taxes goes to the government. They earn 400 to 500 people's economic livelihood is dependent on Forodhani Park. All right, and it's not only evening time. Now see this Eid festival, remarkably totally different look. There are stalls and people enjoy. There are performances here, and a poor guy can also come and attend and can amuse himself. Here there are university students taking measures and they are having experiments from their assignment to university. There are certain photographers who are doing practice. Some are fishing here. Others are taking shadow under tree, and you can see this ice cream hawkers and transportation. So there are people who are just outside Forodhani Park, whether selling spices or clothes or ice cream or cold drinks, water, transportation. So many people are engaged with Forodhani Park. All right. So what the respondent told us that our life has changed. It is our pride. And when we asked that who worked on it, it said Aga Khan has done this. And he is the real friend of Tanzania. So, well, there are so many other things, but we need to move fast. Let me come to Kilwa. Now, this place probably is new for some of you. Let's try to understand this.
The island of Kilwa Kisiwani is located off the coast of southern Tanzania, 200 miles south of the capital, Dar es Salaam. Reachable only by boat from the small mainland town of Kilwa Masoko, the island is home to extensive ruins dating from 3 different periods of occupation. The earliest standing ruins are from the 11th century, when the first sultanate was established at Kilwa by a Persian prince. The Sultan's court amassed great wealth by controlling trade along the East African coast, most significantly the exchange of gold from the interior kingdom of Great Zimbabwe. 2 important structures dating from this era still stand. The first is the Great Mosque, which was built in the 14th century and was once the largest mosque in sub-Saharan Africa. The other is the palace at Husuni Kubwa, built between 1315 and 1330 and renowned for its spectacular pools and courtyards. In 1498, the Portuguese arrived in East Africa and quickly took control of the region's trade. On the northwest tip of Kilwa Kisiwani, they constructed a fort, or gereza as it is known in Swahili, which was completed in 1505. Sections of this fort are still intact and are the focus of World Monuments Fund's current phase of work on the island. In the late 18th century, the Omanis conquered the island and incorporated it into their Indian Ocean Empire, with its capital located at Zanzibar. The fort was substantially rebuilt around 1800 to house Omani soldiers. The remains of a large fortified palace, the Makutani, which means place of thick walls in Swahili, also dates from this time period. Kilwa's economic power declined in the 18th century, and by the 1840s it was largely abandoned. Today, the historic buildings on the island are in varying states of ruin. Ravaged by the elements and threatened by rising sea levels, the fort was placed on the World Monuments Watch in 1996, and all the historic sites on the island were placed on the watch in 2008. WMF's work at the site includes developing a sustainable management plan for the buildings, which are affected by coastal erosion due to the destruction of adjacent mangrove forests. Training the local population in conservation and maintenance skills is another key component, readying them for an inevitable increase in tourism as infrastructure improvements bring more visitors. In 2012, WMF completed the stabilization of the Portuguese fort ruins. The final phase of the multi-year plan, which included the replacement of a historically significant early 19th century door, was carried out by a workforce of skilled craftspeople drawn from nearby villages. Replacing an original with replica is not normally an option in a preservation project, but in this instance, the condition of the original doors left little choice. Working from intricate full-scale drawings based on the original, skilled craftsmen faithfully created a precise replica. The new door is both a masterpiece of wood carving and a significant step in the sustainable preservation of one of East Africa's most important historic structures. Working together with members of the local community, World Monuments Fund is helping to preserve the island's rich legacy for generations to come.
All right, so this was a short introduction of Kilwa. And well, Kilwa is an island of about 1,400 people only. And you need to reach Kilwa Mosoko, and then it's a 15-20 minutes boat ride to go to Kilwa Kisiwani. And if you look at the state of Kilwa Kisiwani, you wonder that 400, 500, 600 years ago, you know, it used to be the hub of Swahili coast of East Africa. And I will talk more about it, but I will focus on this great mosque of Kilwa Kisiwani, the oldest mosque on the Swahili coast of East Africa. So we'll talk about Kisiwani, but again, as I asked you about the garden, now you see today I talked about two sides. You know, I've taken two sides. One is social space, public space, very active, lively space, and it was worked by AKTC. And the other, purposefully, I've gone outside AKDM. So this is World Monument Fund. Okay, and this is inactive site, functionally inactive site. It's ruins of a mosque that was built 800, 900 years ago. So now this mosque has almost died. It was, you know, the conservation took place. But this is the mirror of the island. This has become the capital, honor and dignity of the people of Kilwa Kisiwani. How many? 1,400. So we talk about this. Now, why restoration of a mosque? So you know about this mosque. It's again a historical site, the largest earthen architecture in the world today. Yeah, Mosque of Jineh, Mali. So Imam mentioned when it was the inauguration of the Mosque of Mopti, he said the work of revitalizing the mosque is gradually being extended to their surrounding neighborhoods. Did you understand? Again, local communities are not overlooked, to include all residential accommodations situated in the shadow of minarets. How wonderfully symbolic it is that the outcome of efforts to restore the mosque should be to improve the quality of life of people whose lives follow the same rhythm as theirs. Okay? In parallel to the restoration of the great mosque, the trust has, in collaboration with Mopti's local community, now AKTC was involved, and other AKDN agencies, launched a pilot project to improve the quality of life of people living in the immediate neighborhood. It's a very poor area. Now, by responding to some of their most pressing needs, so AKTC's initial commitment is to improve access to water, end-to-end upgraded sewage network, and to put in place social development, vocational training, and microfinance projects. Now that is other than the restoration of the Mosque of Jineh. In the same speech, Imam mentioned that the significance of these projects extends far beyond the physical restoration of the architectural structure of the mosque. Why? The history of the Ummah has reason to remember the prestige and influence of Mali's great mosques. At the height of the empire, in the 8th century, it was from these great seats of learning, these veritable centers of intellectual and spiritual activity, that Islam spread across Africa. It is therefore an immense privilege for me to be able to restore these magnificent mosques. Here in Mopti and in Jineh or Timbuktu, the great tradition of earth building has been revived, and the skills acquired can henceforth be put into practice in the construction of all earth buildings, whether intended for religious or secular purposes. Okay, so again, what Imam brings to life the point that it is not only restoring the building wall, it's not only about bricks, and mason, or it's not only about stones, etc. It's about people. So when we come to Kilwa, now Kilwa Kiswani, if you see 16th century photo image of Kilwa Kiswani, it's a beautiful town, and it was a hub of trading activity because the gold that was coming from Mozambique or Zimbabwe, and that was headed towards Cairo. Now this Kilwa Kiswani sultans put taxes on it. It grew because that was the route. So let's learn about Kilwa. It's located in the southern coastal area of Tanzania and is regarded as the most significant archaeological and historical site along the East African coast. You know Ibn Battuta, a very renowned traveler, in 1331 he says that Kilwa Kiswani, this island, is one of the most beautiful and well constructed towns in the world. Who says? Ibn Battuta, who traveled everywhere. So you can imagine, but look at the state now. Island of Kilwa Kiswani is said to be inhabited from the 9th century and considered to be the most prosperous settlement ruled by independent African Sultanate initially. Then we know Portuguese came, then Omani Sultanate, finally the colonial power Germans took over. The glory of this splendid trade center took leap from the 11th century onwards. The imaginative representation of Kilwa Kiswani is here, Its 15th century depicts the architectural splendor and affluent outlook attribute to its trade and commercial activities. And this is Kilwa Kiswani. As you reach, you can see the Portuguese fort there, and there are so many cultural heritage sites there. We are going to talk about this mosque. Now, this is a wonder in Kilwa Kiswani. If you get chance, if you get time and opportunity, it has a lovely beaches, by the way. Spend few days there, and you will see 600, 700-year-old legacy there. There are palaces, there are mosques, there are cemetery, and so many other things, fort to see there. So the great of this is the Mosque of Kilwa. This is considered right now the oldest standing mosque in the Swahili coast. And up to 16th century, it was considered largest mosque in Swahili coast. So the splendor of its prayer hall consisting multiple domes, you can see domes there, highlighted the unique status of the Sultan who built this part of the structure. Now, due to its huge size and architectural grandeur, it is considered one of the most outstanding mosques along the Swahili coast and a key monument to study the history of architecture of the Swahili coast between 12th to 15th century. Now, this site was included in the list of UNESCO heritage in 1981 and was taken up for conservation by World Monument Fund in 2008. So you can see there are arches, about domes there. So that Islamic, architecture that comes to our mind, 11th century building. So when we talk to the local community, they said the biggest impact of conservation is economic gain for the island. That conservation has changed the face of Kilwa Kiswani. How? We will talk about it. So there is economic gain, whether it's employability, whether it's capacity building, skill development, whether it's employment and other occupation that they took after that. It also is a matter of dignity and honor for many people who consider this mosque, from their forefathers as a very important omen for the island. And then through this conservation, new relationships were formed because there are more tourists coming in. At one time, according to UNESCO report, there were 200 people visiting annually. Now, 2,000 to 3,000 people. And some of them mentioned that it fosters religiosity, spirituality. I will tell you how. So this was the survey. Now, if you see, this is the mosque. Now, because of the conservation project by World Monument Fund, this is the jetty. So if you want to come to Kilwa Kiswani, you have to first go to Kilwa Mosoko, which is here opposite, and you take a boat and you come to Kilwa Kisiwani, 15 minutes. So of course, the most of the people were farmers and fishermen, and because of the many tourists, many people visiting after the conservation work, it gives a business opportunity for those who are in transport. You will be surprised that from Mosoko, just 15 minutes, they charge 25,000 shillings, Tanzanian shilling. So when tourists come, it's really a matter of great earning for these transport people. So because of the number of visitors being increased after the conservation, there are financial gains. Then people were trained, and if you see, according to World Monument Fund report, 600 people were employed during conservation project. So they didn't bring people from outside. They trained them and they involved community people. So what was the advantage? They are learning new techniques. And the same techniques, once the conservation project was done, they utilized the same technique to build their houses, to protect their houses with the latest techniques. So there is a direct impact on housing, economic gain, social gain. Then many of them are getting work elsewhere because of the new techniques that they learned from World Monument Fund. There are many lodges there in Mosoko area. In Kilwa Mosoko, there are many lodges. Why is there need of many lodges? Because of the visitors. So there is a business opportunity. Then you can see many people, one of them is from Tanzanian Antiquity Officers. There is tour guide. Now, because of the World Monument Fund project, many people were trained as a tourist guide. Some of them were sent to Arusha. 6 of them were sent to France to learn French language. And one of them is here, who also gave us the tour guide. So there are many people who are involved. And after the restoration project, then there is a project in Kua, Mafia Island. And these experienced, skillful people were then also invited there to train people in Mafia. So you see, it's a multiplier effect. So this, and then of course there are other advantages. The people from Dar es Salaam University, from even Uganda and Mombasa come and visit and see this iconic mosque, the oldest mosque in Swahili Coast. You can see people are praying there. Now, this is not a functional mosque, but people still come. When I visited, many people were cleaning. A lady would pass and start, taking broom and cleaning the mosque. And I asked them, why are you doing? He said, this is our mosque. This is our forefathers. We have to protect. Again, remember what UNESCO and international agencies said, community people are the long-term custodian of these sites. So they own it because they were involved right from the beginning. All right. So I remember one person, old man, came and said, I especially want to pray here because my daughter is expecting, and this mosque has a good omen. My forefathers were praying here, and I believe when I pray here, it will be more beneficial for my family. So people have those, sometimes those intangible assets are also intangible heritage is also attached to a site. And there were many who come on Friday and pray specially. But there is no imam or azan. As I told you, it's not functional, but people come and still pray there. And many of them said that the unique part of this mosque is it has two mihrab. What is mihrab? The Qibla direction of, Kaaba. So one is the outside here, and if you go inside the mosque, there is another mihrab because it was again renovated. So at that time the Sultan created the second mihrab. So now again, many people said that we, in spite of other mosques in Kilwa Kisiwani, we want to go do this mosque because it has two mihrab. So it's a good omen. All right. So you can see many benefits there, employability, and as I told you here, that for them now, compared to Forodhani Mosque, for them, the conservation brings the whole island alive because there is money. Now the antiquity, the Tanzanian Antiquity Office injected money because of the WMF. They assisted a dispensary there, school there, and many people said that because of the project, we were able to give fees for our children and they went to school. So now see the direct impact of conservation to the quality of life. So more money, employability, capacity building, religiosity. There are many people who come and read there, as people come in Forodhani Park for reading, So all these are important part of this construction. Now see, to conclude, I want to reiterate Imam's words when he was invited as a keynote speaker in the conference organized by UNESCO and China and Hangzhou Municipal Government 2013, and he highlighted the same point. If you read this speech, I would suggest read, because Imam has said that I want to discuss today not what, but how. Well, the Millennium Goal says that we want to have this, but how? This is what he has mentioned. He has shared many lessons. I'm sharing two lessons. He mentions that while cultural development often begins with physical legacies, so the structures and all material culture, but planning must focus well beyond the cultural goals. We cannot somehow assume that a favorable social and economic impact will flow naturally as a byproduct of cultural commitments. No, it has to be planned. Issues relating to the quality of life must be considered from the beginning and monitored throughout the project's life. World Monument Fund director told me that when they went to Ethiopia, they failed. They had a terrible failure because they did not involve local community. So you see, there are two types of heritage management, procedure or way of doing it. One is called material-based approach, and the other is, value-based approach. In material-based approach, which is totally, authoritarian heritage discourse, where community is not involved, it is protected. So they failed there. And what is the new approach? It is called value-added approach, where local community is the center of the restoration project. And they think that without their involvement, feeling, and opinion, so there are local councils, village councils, they involve, they train, they ask. And in Kilwa, when they were restoring, there was a one burial site. It said, don't restore this. There are spirits there. So we don't want, this is not a good omen to disturb this site. So it was also, removed from the map also. So what I'm trying to say, opinion of local community is important. Imam says, a third point in the list of lessons learned is that the engagement of the local community from the earliest stages is imperative for success. That is value-based approach. Cultural endeavors, in particular, involve risks that go beyond external, beyond economic factors. Their progress can depend heavily on variable qualities of human nature, including the pride and confidence of the people involved. So that's called value-based approach. So you can see, I took you to the Swahili coast without a ticket, and I hope it was little bit insightful. We discussed cultural and heritage sites and conservation, Swahili Coast. I will also share with you some handouts if you want to understand, what is preservation and rehabilitation and conservation, Swahili Coast, quality of life. I took you to the World Heritage Sites, cultural heritage sites, definition, what are the different protection or preservation types. Then I took you to the Swahili coast, then Tanzanian coast, importance of Zanzibar stone town and Kilwa Kisiwani, and what do we mean by quality of life, economic gain, social implications. There are so many variables that are addressed by, is a benefit out of the conservation project. Then we focused on two sites. One was Acadian related, one outside Acadian. One was active, one is functionally inactive. And we talked about garden, why garden, what are the functions in Imam's view. And then for Forodhani Park, he talked about social and economic rationale, which you can see, right? Zanzibar's importance. We talked about the opening of Forodhani, its importance. AKTC took over, and then there was a survey, and people consider it's of enormous value socially, economically. If you take out Forodhani Park, you are paralyzing many local people. And we went to Kilwa, which not many people know. And this mosque, this is iconic mosque for us Muslims. It's our pride. And why invest in rehabilitation or restoration of mosque? We went through the speeches, then the historical overview of Kilwa Kiswani, then this mosque, which is an amazing piece of architecture today, how it is providing economic gain, honor, new relationship, etc. How many people are benefiting just because the approach that we are using is a value-based approach. Hey, 5:15 on time. Thank you very much. Are people there or people have left? Okay. And there are some very good comments and which adds to this presentation. I'll just remind you that if there are any questions, and if you will see in the chat box evaluation, we want to introduce this so that we improve our performance when we are doing this for the any other constituency. So you can see how important it is, when we talk about material culture, when we talk about this AKTC projects. So youths are very interested, and we should and see how spirituality or religiosity comes with it. So this is the best part of taking such sessions. I can is a amazing. Oh, okay. So there is a quick. Can I please ask someone from Mozambique to do? Oh, okay. Azam, sorry, I'm reading the wrong sentence. So if there are no questions, then please, Shamir, can you put in the chat box that evaluation?
Zara, if I may.
Yeah, please unmute yourself. Zara wants to say something, and then Rafiq also. Yeah.
Yes, Zara, go ahead.
Yes, Zara, do you want to ask? Okay.
Right, Altaf, is there anyone from DRC or Mozambique on the call?
1 minute.
If you are from DRC or Mozambique, please speak up.
Yeah, please. and communicate with Azam in the chat box, please. Okay. Any Rafiq, you wanted to say something?
No, thanks, Altaf. Just one comment I had. In fact, you will help me understand better. By the way, amazing presentation, first of all. And, you considered so many important aspects like culture, heritage, and also about the quality of life. I was just thinking that if you could further help us understand that how this presentation of yours will help us, the people of Tariqa board, to transform this as religious education of the Jamaat.
It's a very good question. Just before you ask this question, my concluding remarks was that, how through architecture we make spirituality and religiosity alive in the lives of the youth. I was so fascinated when I was preparing this, and I thought this can be a very good, presentation for STEP. If, maybe during the camp, we can also, use it during our adult RE program, because if we don't explain them the meaning behind what Imam is doing and how is he helping, rather than just giving the grant and anything, how is not only restoring cultural site but also impacting quality of life. So this can be a seminar. It can come in the way of seminar. It can also we should talk to, we have programs for educators. I think religion teachers, this can be a very good presentation. Like we must take Cairo, Darbul Ahmar. How many people live near Cairo, Al Azhar Park, and how their life transformed. There is an ECD program there. There is a health program running there. So under the umbrella of this restoration or conservation, how much Imam is doing. And if one person's life is changed because of that, so the next generation also benefit. So I think our youth, religion teachers, secondary students need to understand this, that why is Imam making Alberta Garden in Canada? What is the use of it? Or what is so important about Mali? Or why, Cairo? And forget this about why is he so much interested in Humayun tomb, etc. So that will be a great service to our Jamaat, to a particular segment of the Jamaat, to educate them. There can be many formats that we can introduce.
Amazing. Thank you, Altaf. I actually wanted to hear that only because the way culture is getting part of our curriculum, and Imam is so much concerned about it. He's so much keen that the culture should become part of the curriculum.
Exactly.
That's very exactly, this idea of culture, heritage is so important so that we can infuse these themes in the RE. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Altaf, will you be providing any of those materials? I think in the past, what we had tried to do with the ITRB, who was doing all the hard work like you've done, there was then an intention to pass on some ready-made materials, both in terms of readings and those types of things that educators could use with the Jamaat.
Sure, and what I'm also, I will try that, I don't want to restrict myself to Kilwa and only for Udani, it's gone, it's last year. I also want to work on gardens, and then whenever, if something is prepared, I will not wait for All Africa presentation. I will just share it so that it can go, and if it is helpful. And equally, like when we share all these presentation and material, I have a lot of material on Kilwa and Forudani. So I will share with you all.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, if you could package all of that up together, even if it's overkill, I think don't worry, because each person will choose different things from it.
Exactly.
That works for them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Azam. Shamir, have you put this evaluation link?
No, let me do it now.
Yeah, okay. I've got some good comment, like Zahur has mentioned that it's good for the youth. Chairman Sahib Kenya Itra mentioned that it is good for all the segments of the Jamaat. And it would be nice if, like if we are having monthly presentation, at least 2 or 3 presentation in a year is focused on culture. It will be really good. Shabnam, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, that was a wonderful presentation, Altaf sir. Thank you so much for giving an excellent coverage to this heritage sites of Zanzibar and Kilwa. I would like all the participants to please fill the feedback form. And thank you so much for joining us for today's presentation. And I would like to give a special thanks to Shamir Hirani, who has assisted in making this call happen. And once again, thank you so much. Please take care of yourself. Stay healthy and stay safe. Yadi Madad.
Thank you very much once again. If there is any question, well, the good thing is it's 5:20. We are still having 10 minutes. My only request is that please do fill evaluation so that we continue to improve. You are very right, Chairman Sahib. Zimam is emphasizing on art, culture, music. Well, music is one, again, a very good topic to be taken. So are we deciding who is going to take over next month? I don't know, Azam, any idea? So
we've had, I think, so Kenya did the first 2. I think Tanzania did 2 consecutively as well. And now Uganda has done the same. The hope was that being the larger ITRABs that we would each do 2. And then the DRC and Mozambique would then do 1 each. And then we could go back through the rotation again. That's why I was hoping there would be somebody on the call from DRC or Mozambique.
Surprisingly, the attendance is little thin today. I know there is Empty program going on, but we'll have to see DRC, Mozambique, and Madagascar. But anyways, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Please take care of yourself. I hope you have copied the link because we are closing now. And thank you very much. Yali Madad.
Yali Madad.